The collision that changed everything. Marcus Webb had exactly 17 minutes to deliver the emergency repair schematics to Commander Thos before the Kryvon station's life support system began its catastrophic failure sequence. 17 minutes to navigate 3 decks of the massive orbital platform, dodge the usual morning traffic of diplomats and traders, and somehow not get himself killed by accidentally offending one of the dozens of alien species that called this neutral territory home. He sprinted through the curved corridors, his magnetic boots keeping him grounded despite the station's irregular gravity fluctuations. The data pad clutched in his hands contained solutions to problems that had stumped the station's best engineers for the past 6 hours. Marcus was good at his job, maybe the best human engineer in this sector, but he was also notoriously clumsy when rushing. The Kryvon station was a marvel of cooperative engineering, a joint venture between 12 different species after the Treaty of Hesperus had ended the border wars. Humans were relative newcomers to the galactic community, barely 2 generations past first contact, and they were still proving themselves worthy of respect among races that had been traveling the stars for millennia. Marcus rounded a corner at full speed, his eyes on the data pad as he checked the calculations one more time. The solution was elegant, routing power through secondary conduits that most species would never consider because they required manual recalibration every 6 hours. But humans were adaptable, willing to do tedious work that others found beneath them. That persistence was becoming humanity's signature trait among the stars. He didn't see her until it was too late. The impact was sudden and devastating. Marcus slammed into something solid, his momentum carrying him forward even as his boots lost magnetic contact with the deck. The data pad flew from his hands, clattering against the wall. He stumbled, reaching out instinctively to catch himself, and his hands made contact with fabric, with curves, with someone he had just crashed into from behind. Time seemed to freeze. Marcus found himself pressed against the back of a tall figure dressed in flowing dark robes that shimmered like liquid night. His hands were planted firmly on what his panicked brain registered as her backside before he could pull away. The scent hit him next, something like winter storms and ancient metal, and he knew with absolute certainty that he had just made a terrible mistake. The figure turned slowly, deliberately, and Marcus stumbled backward until his back hit the corridor wall. He looked up, and up further still, into the face of a Valkyrie. She was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. The Valkyrie were humanoid in the way that wolves were similar to dogs, close enough to be recognizable but different enough to trigger every instinct that screamed danger. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, with pale skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Her features were sharp and elegant, high cheekbones and a jawline that could cut glass, framed by hair so black it seemed to create shadows around it. But her eyes were what made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. They were silver, bright as moonlight on steel, and they were fixed on him with an intensity that felt physical. As he watched, those eyes began to shift color, silver bleeding into deep crimson that spoke of rage and bloodlust. The Valkyrie were the galaxy's apex predators, a race of warriors and scholars who had conquered their home system before humans had invented the wheel. They were long-lived, powerful, and bound by honor codes so strict that breaking them meant death. They were also the closest thing the galaxy had to vampires, though they considered that human comparison insulting and inaccurate. This particular Valkyrie wore the crimson sash of military command across her robes, and the silver insignia marked her as high nobility. Marcus recognized the symbols even through his panic. He had just assaulted a Valkyrie war leader. Her lips pulled back slowly, revealing the fangs that Valkyrie usually kept concealed in polite company. When she spoke, her voice was low and controlled, with an accent that made each word sound like a blade being drawn from a sheath. "Do you want to die, human?" It wasn't a rhetorical question. Marcus could see it in her eyes, in the tension of her shoulders, in the way her hand had moved to rest on the ornate weapon at her hip. She was genuinely asking if he preferred immediate execution to whatever alternative she was considering. Marcus opened his mouth to apologize, to explain, to beg for his life, but no sound came out. His engineering mind, usually so quick with solutions, offered nothing but static and terror. Then something strange happened. The Valkyrie woman froze mid-threat. Her eyes widened, the crimson fading back to silver and then to something else entirely, a color Marcus had never seen in Valkyrie eyes before, almost golden. Her expression shifted from rage to confusion to what looked impossibly like shock. She took a sharp breath, audible in the suddenly quiet corridor, and her hand moved from her weapon to press against her chest. Around them, other beings who had stopped to watch the confrontation began to whisper. Several Valkyrie in the crowd made sounds of disbelief. One word began to spread through the gathering crowd, repeated in multiple languages and dialects. Marcus's translator Chip rendered it as soul recognition in English, though he could hear the weight of meaning that didn't quite translate properly. Impossible, the Valkyrie woman whispered, staring at Marcus like he had just performed a miracle or committed an unthinkable crime. This cannot be. A male Valkyrie pushed through the crowd, older than the woman, with scars across his face that spoke of centuries of combat. He looked between Marcus and the woman, his own eyes widening in recognition. Lady Seriva, he said urgently. Is it true? Has the human triggered recognition? Lady Seriva. Marcus's mind supplied information even through his panic. Lady Seriva Kale, commander of the Valkyrie Third Fleet, hero of the Battle of Crimson Nebula, member of the High Council, and one of the most decorated warriors in Valkyrie history. He had just bumped into, groped, one of the most powerful and dangerous beings in this entire sector of space. Yes, Seriva said, her voice barely above a whisper. I feel it. The recognition is undeniable. The crowd's whispers grew louder, more urgent. Several beings were backing away, as if Marcus and Seriva had become radioactive. Others were pulling out communication devices, clearly spreading the news. Marcus finally found his voice. I don't understand. What's happening? What is soul recognition? Seriva turned her full attention back to him, and Marcus saw her fighting for composure. Soul recognition is a biological phenomenon that occurs between compatible Valkyrie. It happens once in a lifetime, if it happens at all. It is the foundation of our bonding practices, the moment when two individuals recognize each other as perfect genetic and spiritual matches. But I'm human, Marcus said stupidly. Exactly, Seriva replied, and there was something like horror in her voice. Soul recognition has never, in 10,000 years of recorded Valkyrie history, occurred between our kind and another species. Our biology should not respond to yours. The chemical markers that trigger recognition should not exist in human physiology. But they do, the scarred Valkyrie said grimly. We all sensed the change in your scent, Lady Seriva. We saw your physical response. The recognition is genuine. Seriva's hand clenched into a fist at her side. This is a disaster. I'm sorry, Marcus said quickly. I didn't mean to bump into you. Someone was blocking the corridor earlier, and I was late, and I didn't see you, and I would never intentionally. Your intent is irrelevant, Seriva interrupted. The recognition has occurred. According to Valkyrie law and custom, there are only two possible outcomes now. Marcus waited, dreading the answer. We formally bond as mates, Seriva continued, each word seeming to cause her pain. Or one of us dies to release the other from the biological imperative. The corridor seemed to tilt around Marcus. Dies? You're saying that because I accidentally triggered this recognition thing, one of us has to die. The death clause exists because killing one's recognized mate is considered so abhorrent that it essentially never happens, the scarred Valkyrie explained. The biological drive to protect the one who triggered your recognition is extraordinarily powerful. But the law acknowledges that death is the only alternative to bonding. This is insane, Marcus said. I came here to deliver repair schematics. I'm an engineer, not, he gestured helplessly between himself and Seriva. I can't bond with a Valkyrie war leader. I'm nobody. I'm just a human trying to keep the station's life support running. And I cannot bond with a human, Seriva said coldly, though Marcus noticed her eyes kept tracking his movements, as if she couldn't help but monitor his position. I am of the High Council. My lineage is pure and ancient. Bonding with a short-lived human engineer would be political suicide and personal humiliation. Then what do we do? Marcus asked. Before Seriva could answer, a new voice cut through the crowd. You will both come with me. Immediately. Commander Thos pushed through the gathering, his 6 arms gesturing for the crowd to disperse. The Hexarian commander was one of the few beings on the station who could give orders to someone of Seriva's rank and expect them to be followed, simply because the Kryvon station was neutral territory and he was its appointed administrator. The Valkyrie Council is already convening an emergency session, Thos continued, his translator rendering his clicking speech into flat, emotionless English. They have demanded the human be brought before them. Lady Seriva, your presence is also required. Commander, the life support repairs, Marcus started, but Thos waved one arm dismissively. Already being handled by your backup team using the schematics you transmitted before this incident. The station will not die today, Engineer Webb. Whether you will is another matter entirely. Seriva's hand shot out faster than Marcus could track, gripping Thos's nearest arm with enough force to make the commander's exoskeleton creak. If you are threatening she stopped abruptly, seeming to realize what she was about to say. Her hand released Thos, and she stepped back, her expression carefully controlled. The human is under my protection until the council decides his fate. Thos rubbed his arm, looking between them with what might have been fascination in his compound eyes. The recognition is already affecting your behavior, Lady Seriva. Fascinating. And dangerous. 2 Valkyrie guards appeared, flanking Marcus and Seriva. The council chamber is prepared, one of them announced. We are to escort both of you immediately. As they began to walk, Seriva fell into step beside Marcus, maintaining a careful distance but clearly unwilling to let him out of her sight. Marcus noticed she positioned herself between him and potential threats, her body language protective despite her obvious resentment of the situation. For what it's worth, Marcus said quietly, I really am sorry. I didn't know any of this was possible. Seriva didn't look at him. Your apology changes nothing. The recognition has occurred. Biology cares nothing for intent or desire. Now we must both face consequences of an impossibility that should never have happened. They walked through the station in tense silence, surrounded by guards and followed by whispers. Marcus's mind raced, trying to process everything. He had come to the Kryvon station to prove human engineering capabilities, to show that his species deserved their place among the stars. Instead, he had accidentally triggered an ancient alien bonding ritual with one of the galaxy's most dangerous warriors. The council chamber loomed ahead, its doors opening to reveal a semicircle of Valkyrie dignitaries, each one radiating power and authority. At the center sat the High Arbiter, ancient beyond measure, whose golden eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made Lady Seriva's earlier rage seem gentle by comparison. Bring the human forward, the Arbiter commanded. Let us examine this impossibility and determine whether it will be honored or ended. Marcus took a deep breath and stepped into the chamber, very aware that his life now hung in the balance, dependent on the whims of beings whose culture he barely understood and whose biology had apparently recognized him as something he had no idea how to be. The doors closed behind them with a finality that sounded like a tomb being sealed. When biology defies politics. The council chamber was circular, designed to intimidate. 12 Valkyrie dignitaries sat in elevated positions around the perimeter, their dark robes blending with the shadows, making their pale faces and glowing eyes seem to float in the darkness. The ceiling stretched upward into blackness, and the floor was polished stone that reflected everything like dark water. Marcus stood in the center of the chamber, feeling like a specimen under examination. Lady Seriva stood 3 paces to his right, her military bearing perfect, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers twitched toward her weapon whenever someone moved too quickly. The High Arbiter leaned forward, her ancient face unreadable. She had ruled the Valkyrie Council for over 8 centuries, and her word was absolute law among her people. Her golden eyes, rare among Valkyrie, studied Marcus with an intensity that made him want to look away, but he forced himself to meet her gaze. Showing weakness now would be fatal. Marcus Webb, the Arbiter's voice resonated through the chamber. Human. Engineer. 28 standard years old. Assigned to Kryvon Station for 14 months. Unremarkable service record, though competent in your field. She paused. And now, somehow, you have triggered soul recognition with Lady Seriva Kale, one of our most distinguished warriors. Explain how this occurred. Marcus swallowed hard. High Arbiter, I was rushing to deliver emergency repair schematics to Commander Thas. The station's life support was failing. I came around a corner too fast and collided with Lady Seriva from behind. The contact was completely accidental. I didn't even know she was there until after the impact. Accidental, the Arbiter repeated, her tone suggesting she found the word insufficient. And yet the recognition occurred. Every Valkyrie present in that corridor confirmed it. They smelled the change in Lady Seriva's pheromones. They witnessed her physical response. You, human, somehow possess the biological markers that trigger our most sacred bonding process. I don't understand how that's possible, Marcus admitted. I'm just human. We don't have anything like soul recognition in our biology. A Valkyrie to the Arbiter's left spoke up, a male with silver hair and scholarly robes. That is what makes this situation so extraordinary. Our research into human biology revealed nothing that should trigger recognition. Your pheromone structures are completely different from ours. Your genetic markers are incompatible. By every measure we possess, this should be impossible. And yet it happened, another council member said, a female with scars across her neck. Which means either our understanding of recognition is incomplete, or the human has been somehow altered. I haven't been altered, Marcus protested. I'm baseline human. No genetic modifications, no cybernetic enhancements beyond the standard translator chip. I'm exactly what I appear to be. Then our biology has betrayed us, the scarred council member said coldly. Recognition is supposed to identify compatible Valkyrie mates, individuals whose genetic profiles will produce strong offspring, whose temperaments align for permanent bonding. It cannot possibly serve that function with a human. Unless, the scholarly Valkyrie said thoughtfully, recognition is not as species-specific as we believed. Perhaps it identifies compatible traits that transcend genetic similarity. Psychological compatibility, pheromone resonance on a deeper level, neurological patterns that align despite different evolutionary paths. That is speculation, another council member snapped. What matters is what we do now. Lady Seriva, you have remained silent. What is your assessment of this situation? Seriva's jaw tightened. When she spoke, her voice was carefully controlled. High Arbiter, honored council members, I am experiencing the full effects of soul recognition. The human scent has become uniquely identifiable to me. I am constantly aware of his position, his breathing, his emotional state. I feel protective instincts toward him that override my rational judgment. When Commander Thas implied threat to Marcus, I reacted defensively before I could control the response. Several council members exchanged meaningful looks. You are already bonding, the Arbiter said quietly. The recognition has progressed beyond initial trigger into active attachment formation. Yes, Seriva admitted, and Marcus heard the frustration in her voice. I have attempted to suppress the response, but it intensifies with proximity and time. Every moment in his presence strengthens the bond. This is unacceptable, the scarred council member declared. Lady Seriva, you are of pure bloodline, descended from the first families. You command our third fleet. You sit on military councils that shape the future of our people. You cannot bond with a human who will be dead of old age before you reach middle years. Marcus felt that comment like a physical blow. He had known the Valkyrie lived for centuries, but hearing his lifespan described as negligible still stung. What would you suggest? Seriva asked, her tone dangerous. That I kill him? That would end the recognition, certainly, but it would also violate every instinct the recognition has created. I would be fighting my own biology for the rest of my life, potentially damaging my effectiveness as a warrior and leader. Then perhaps, another council member said carefully, separation is the answer. Send the human back to Earth. Remove him from Valkyrie space entirely. Distance may weaken the recognition over time. Or it may drive Lady Seriva into recognition madness, the scholarly Valkyrie countered. Forced separation from a recognized mate causes severe psychological damage. Memory deterioration, emotional instability, decreased cognitive function. We would be destroying one of our finest warriors to avoid an uncomfortable political situation. The debate continued, voices rising as council members argued. Marcus stood in the center, his fate being decided by beings who viewed him as everything from a fascinating anomaly to a contaminating influence. He noticed Seriva's hands clenching and unclenching at her sides, her eyes tracking each speaker with predatory focus. Then the lights went out. Emergency illumination kicked in immediately, bathing the chamber in red warning light. An alarm began to wail, the specific pattern that Marcus had programmed himself to indicate catastrophic hull breach. What is happening? The Arbiter demanded. Commander Thassa's voice came through the communication system, distorted by interference. Explosion in the lower engineering sector. Hull breach on 3 decks. We're venting atmosphere and the emergency seals are failing. We need evacuation protocols activated immediately. Marcus was moving before his conscious mind caught up. High Arbiter, I need access to a terminal. Now. You presume to give orders in this chamber, the scarred council member began, but the Arbiter held up one hand. Let him work. If the station dies, this debate becomes meaningless. A panel in the wall slid open, revealing a holographic interface. Marcus ran to it, his fingers flying across the controls as he pulled up the station's emergency systems. What he saw made his blood run cold. The explosion wasn't accidental, he said, his mind racing through solutions. Someone sabotaged the primary and secondary seal systems. The emergency protocols are locked out, and the automated repair systems are offline. Can you fix it? The Arbiter asked. Not from here. I need to get to the engineering core physically. The manual override systems are shielded against remote access, which is exactly why someone targeted them. Seriva was suddenly beside him, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her body. How long do we have? Marcus checked the breach projections. 15 minutes before the affected sections lose all atmosphere. 20 before the cascade failure reaches life support for the entire station. 40,000 beings will die if we don't stop this. Then we go, Seriva said simply. She turned to the council. High Arbiter, I request permission to accompany Engineer Webb to the engineering core. You would risk yourself for the humans' mission? The scarred council member asked incredulously. I would risk myself to save this station, Seriva corrected, though Marcus noticed she positioned herself between him and the council members. The human has the knowledge to fix this. I have the combat skills to ensure he survives long enough to do so. If someone sabotaged the station, they may attempt to stop repair efforts. The Arbiter studied them both for a long moment. Go. Save the station. We will continue this discussion if you both survive. They ran. The corridors were chaos. Beings of a dozen species rushed toward evacuation points, some carrying belongings, others helping injured companions. Security forces tried to maintain order, but panic was spreading faster than information. Seriva moved through the crowd like a blade through water, her presence causing beings to scramble out of her path. Marcus struggled to keep up, his shorter legs working overtime to match her ground-eating stride. The engineering core is 7 decks down, Marcus panted. We need to take the emergency shafts. The main elevators will be locked down. Follow me, Seriva commanded. She took a sharp turn into a maintenance corridor, then kicked open a service hatch that Marcus would have needed tools and authorization codes to access. They dropped into a vertical shaft, Seriva controlling their descent with one hand on the emergency ladder while her other arm wrapped around Marcus's waist. "I can climb myself," Marcus protested, though he was acutely aware of her strength and the protective way she held him. "Not fast enough," Seriva replied. "And if you fall, the recognition will force me to choose between saving you and saving the station. Do not put me in that position." They descended rapidly, Seriva's enhanced strength making the ladder rungs blur past. Marcus's engineering mind noted the efficiency of her movements, the way she anticipated his weight shifts and adjusted her grip accordingly. They emerged on the engineering deck to find smoke filling the corridors. Emergency lighting flickered, casting everything in hellish red and orange. The air tasted of burning insulation and leaked coolant. A figure stepped out of the smoke ahead of them. Valkyrie, male, wearing dark combat armor that bore no insignia. In his hands was a plasma weapon pointed directly at Marcus. "I cannot allow you to proceed, human," the Valkyrie said calmly. "The station must fall. It is a symbol of weakness, of collaboration with lesser species. Its destruction will prove that the old ways were right." Seriva moved faster than Marcus could track. One moment she was beside him, the next she was on the attacker, her hand deflecting the plasma weapon's barrel just as it discharged. The shot burned past Marcus's shoulder close enough to feel the heat. The fight was brutal and brief. Seriva disarmed the attacker with a move that broke his wrist, then followed with strikes that demonstrated centuries of combat experience. Within seconds, the saboteur was unconscious on the deck. "There will be others," Seriva said, breathing hard. "Traditionalists who oppose Valkyrie integration with other species. They would see this station destroyed and blame it on structural failure." "Then we need to move fast," Marcus said, already running toward the engineering core entrance. The core itself was a cathedral of machinery, 3 stories of quantum processors and power conduits that regulated every critical system on the station. Marcus went straight to the manual override station, his hands moving with the confidence of countless hours spent in similar systems. "The seals are completely locked out," he said, pulling up diagnostic displays. "Someone didn't just sabotage them, they rewrote the entire control architecture. This is sophisticated work. Can you fix it?" Seriva asked, positioning herself at the entrance, her weapon drawn and ready for more attackers. "Yes, but not the way they'd expect." Marcus's fingers flew across multiple interfaces simultaneously. "I need to route control through the life support system's secondary processors. They're not designed for this kind of load, but they're not locked out because the saboteurs didn't think anyone would try using them." Alarms were blaring now, counting down the time until catastrophic failure. Marcus blocked them out, falling into the focus state where nothing existed except the problem and the solution. His hands moved in patterns he'd practiced 10,000 times, creating new connection pathways, rerouting power, bypassing security protocols that were meant to prevent exactly what he was doing. "Contact," Seriva called out. 3 more Valkyrie in combat armor emerged from different entrances to the core. She met them with brutal efficiency, her movements a deadly dance that kept them away from Marcus while he worked. Marcus heard the sounds of combat behind him, plasma fire and the impact of bodies hitting metal. He forced himself not to turn around, to trust that Seriva could handle the attackers. His job was the station. 5 minutes left. "Done," he called out, initiating the emergency seal deployment sequence. Throughout the station, barriers would be slamming into place, containing the hull breach and preventing further atmosphere loss. But the damaged section still needed repair. He pulled up another interface, accessing the repair drone networks. "I'm deploying all available drones to the breach sites. They'll patch the holes well enough to hold until proper repairs can be made." Behind him, Seriva threw her last attacker into a bulkhead hard enough to dent the metal. She turned to Marcus, her face spattered with blood that wasn't hers, her eyes wild with adrenaline and something else. The recognition, Marcus realized. She had just fought to protect him, and her biology was rewarding that instinct. "The station?" she asked, her voice rough. Marcus checked the final diagnostics. "Stable. The seals are holding, the drones are working. We'll need proper engineering crews for permanent fixes, but no one's going to die today." Seriva crossed the distance between them in 2 strides. For a moment, Marcus thought she might embrace him, but she stopped just short, her hands clenching at her sides as she fought the impulse. "You saved 40,000 lives," she said quietly. "Human ingenuity and persistence, just as your species claims." "We saved them," Marcus corrected. "I couldn't have gotten here without you. Those attackers would have killed me in seconds." They stood facing each other in the damaged engineering core, both breathing hard, both aware that something had shifted between them. The recognition was no longer just a biological inconvenience. They had fought together, trusted each other, saved lives together. "The Council will still want answers," Seriva said finally. "They will still demand we choose between bonding and separation." "I know," Marcus replied. "But maybe now they'll understand that this recognition, impossible as it seems, isn't just biology making a mistake. We work well together, Seriva. We complement each other's strengths." Seriva's lips curved into something that might have been the beginning of a smile. "You are arguing that we should formalize the bond." "I'm arguing that fighting biology is harder than working with it," Marcus said. "And I'm saying that maybe, just maybe, the recognition saw something in us that we haven't recognized ourselves yet." Before Seriva could respond, Commander Thassa's voice came through the communication system. "Engineer Webb, Lady Seriva, the station is secure. The Council requests your immediate return to the chamber. There are questions about the saboteurs and the explosion." They walked back through the damaged corridors together, no longer maintaining careful distance. When they entered the Council chamber, the Arbiter's golden eyes tracked their movement, noting their proximity, the way they unconsciously coordinated their steps. "You saved the station," the Arbiter said. "Both of you. And in doing so, you demonstrated something important. Engineer Webb, you showed courage and capability that earned respect. Lady Seriva, you protected him without hesitation, proving the recognition's hold on you is complete. The question now is what we do with this unprecedented situation." The scarred council member started to speak, but the Arbiter held up her hand. "I have made my decision. The recognition is real. The bond is forming. Fighting it would damage Lady Seriva and waste Engineer Webb's obvious talents. Therefore, I propose an alternative to the traditional choices." She leaned forward, her ancient gaze moving between them. "You will be given 1 solar cycle to determine if this bond can work in practice, not just in biology. Engineer Webb will remain on this station. Lady Seriva will continue her duties but will be permitted to pursue the recognition. If, at the cycle's end, you both choose to formalize the bond, it will be recognized by this council with full legal standing. If you choose separation, we will assist in managing the biological consequences." "You would legitimize a human-Valkyrie bond?" the scarred council member asked, shocked. "I would legitimize a bond that saved 40,000 lives today," the Arbiter replied. "And I would acknowledge that perhaps our understanding of recognition needs to expand beyond tradition. The galaxy is changing. We change with it or we become irrelevant." Marcus looked at Seriva, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think," Seriva said slowly, "that I would like to have dinner with you, Engineer Webb. Properly. As 2 individuals getting to know each other, rather than as biology's unwilling victims." "That sounds good," Marcus replied, feeling something warm unfold in his chest. "Though I should warn you, human courtship is probably very different from Valkyrie traditions." "Then you will teach me," Seriva said, and this time the smile was unmistakable. "Just as I will teach you our ways. We have a solar cycle to determine if we are compatible in more than just biology." The council dismissed them, and they walked from the chamber together. Somewhere in the station, repair crews were working on damaged sections. Somewhere, security was interrogating captured saboteurs. But for Marcus Webb and Lady Seriva Kale, the galaxy had narrowed to the space between them, to the impossible bond that had formed from an accidental collision, and to the uncertain future they would now explore together. Marcus had come to the Kryvon station to prove human engineering capabilities. He was leaving the council chamber with something far more valuable, a chance at connection across the vast gulf between species, proof that sometimes the impossible was just the unexpected waiting to be understood. So, he said as they walked. Dinner. Should I be worried about Valkyrie cuisine? Seriva's laugh was like distant thunder. Perhaps. But I promise not to eat you, Engineer Webb. The recognition would never forgive me. And somehow, impossibly, Marcus found himself laughing too, walking beside an alien vampire warrior who had asked if he wanted to die, and who now offered him a future he had never imagined possible.